All right, so got a pretty short one today. We're just going to be talking about failure. We're going to beat this horse to a pulp, and then we're going to move on and start talking about thought and that aspect of consciousness. And I'm super excited to do that, but I know that I still have one more video to get through, and so let's get into this. So, as we know, humans are meant to break natural law. We're designed for it. We actually do it, and it's part of our being, it's part of our psychology, and it's known as redemption in religious spheres. And this is also just simply known as how we learn through failure. And so, for example, if you're in a particular situation, you have an experience, something is occurring around you, and you have a decision to make. And you make a decision. You decide you're going to experience and take action in the world, right? Let's say that decision that you made was wrong. You made a mistake. You committed a wrong, right? We know what occurs after that. We feel bad about it. We experience the feeling of negative emotions. The feeling bad is the consequence of your wrong action. So, if you're a critical thinker, which you should be by now, if you've been listening to this stuff, or you should be trying to obtain, then the goal is to figure out what you did wrong. That's a big deal because you may not entirely know what you did wrong after you make the mistake. And that's the first thing. The action was wrong, so it must be this action. And then you have to think further. You have to think deeper, as opposed to just, okay, I'll never do that action again. You have to reject that idea because that action may be right in another situation. But the other idea is to figure out what the right action would be in that particular situation. And so let's say you think about it, you ask a couple friends, you get a consensus about what the right thing to do in that particular situation is. And that feels pretty good. And then let's say a similar situation arises, just like the previous situation. The past situation that you had an experience on, that you committed the wrong action in, you have a similar situation arising. Now you know, or you think you know, what the right answer is. And as opposed to not taking a decision, not taking an action in the world, you decide to have a little experiment. You decide to have a little bit of experience. And so what you do is you utilize your past experience of the wrong action. You don't do that in that particular situation, and you do what you believe is the right decision. You believe what is the right decision, which you figured out through the process of acknowledging that you made a wrong decision in the past situation, and you tried to come to a consensus as to what the right thing to do in that particular situation would have been. And then, so you do what you think was the right thing to do. And in this particular situation, you were correct. Congrats. All this means is that you have been redeemed. You've figured it out. You fell, you made a mistake, you failed, you thought about that failure, you absolved to do better in the future by trying to figure out what the right thing to do in that particular situation is. And then when that particular situation rose up again, gave you the opportunity to prove yourself that you've done the work necessary in order to overcome the situation, and you showed up. You did it. Congrats. That's all that redemption means, really. And in modern language, it just means that you learned from your past errors and have corrected yourself. And that feeling of success and that boost in confidence, that positive motivation, the serotonin, the dopamine releases that you earned through this process of failure, critical thinking, and then locating yourself or positioning yourself to correct yourself in real time, earns you positive emotion, earns you positive feeling, and that's the consequence of your right action. And I just want to point out one last time, notice how emotion plays the integral role in this process. You have to listen to your emotions. You don't dwell on your emotions. You feel bad. You go, why am I feeling bad? What did I do wrong? Is this something that is in control, that I'm in control of? Or is it something that I'm not in control of? If it's something that I'm not in control of, then I'm not going to allow this thing that I'm not in control of to make me feel bad. And then if it is in your control, then try to figure it out. Try to figure it out because you're in control of the situation. You can correct that. You can correct yourself and get the right action, get the positive emotion, get the positive dopamine release inside of your brain. But the point here is that you have to be able to make mistakes in order to learn, because failure is how we learn. And remember, to me, the opposite of success is not failure. Okay, failure is how we get to success. The opposite of success is quit. Okay, and so happiness and success are synonymous with one another, and so quit and depression are synonymous with one another as well in the opposite formation. And so ultimately, this means that if you quit at something, then this means that you can no longer be successful at that thing. That's just what quit means. It means that you are cutting yourself off from being able to be successful in a particular thing. So we always have to remind ourselves that experience is a win-win. When you win, you win. And that's great, okay? You get the positive emotions, right? Well, when you lose, you learn. And that's just as important, because you learn what the right thing to do is in that particular situation. Or at the very least, you learn one of the wrong things to do in that particular situation, which is pretty good too. Okay? And so this is exactly how the nature of the human body actually works. So we could just look at the immune system inside of your body. Your immune system fights off infections, bacterias, viruses, pretty much anything that invades your body, that gets inside of you and starts multiplying, growing, making you feel dis-ease, right? And so what it does in order to do this is that it actually has to learn what the right thing to do is in order to overcome or defeat the invader. And so it does this the exact same way that you do. It learns the same way that you learn. It's the same process, okay? So the first time your body comes into contact with an unfamiliar invader, okay, let's say a particular bacteria, well, your immune response actually goes to work by trying to learn or trying to figure out how to destroy the invader. And it does this through a process of failure, okay? It does this through a process of mutation failure. It mutates itself. It does wrong mutation after wrong mutation after wrong mutation until your immune cells actually mutate in such a way that makes them capable of destroying the invading bacteria. Every failed mutation, every wrong, results in more illness or dis-ease for the individual, for you. And it's only after the right mutation occurs that things actually start to get better for the individual. And so, once your immune system has actually learned how to destroy the invader, it doesn't just forget how to do that. What it does is that it saves a couple of those cells that have mutated into the particular way that it needs in order to defeat that thing, and then that allows it to basically use its memory in case you get invaded by this thing again. It'll be able to fight off the bacteria much more effectively the second time, okay? And so, the mark of a good immune system is the same as the mark of a good of an intelligent person, okay? So the mark of a good immune system isn't one that's protected from experiencing pathogens. It's not one that cleans itself and makes sure that it's super clean and disinfected and is afraid to get dirty, okay? But it's actually one that's exposed to pathogens, because that's the only way it's going to learn how to overcome the pathogens. And, you know, we're much more evolved beyond the idea of having to stab ourselves with the disgusting, dirty, feces-infested shanks, you know? We don't have to do that in order to allow our immune system to learn how to overcome particular viruses and illnesses and bacterias. You know, we've invented vaccines that work great for viruses, and they actually help this process along, okay? And so this is exactly analogous to how you should perceive being wrong. Just look at your immune system, your mental immune system towards the unknown, towards experiencing new things, is very similar, okay? And so you have to experience being wrong. You have to expose yourself to failure in order to acquire knowledge on what the right thing to do is. But just like with vaccines, you don't have to stab yourself with a feces-infested shank, you know? In order to learn that, you know, you don't have to do that in order to learn that, you know, the initiation of violence is not a good thing, okay? You don't need to do that, because we can actually do the same thing that we do with vaccines. Okay, we can acquire knowledge beyond our actual experience through secondhand learning and through inductive and deductive reasoning, which is what we're going to talk about in the next couple of videos. And so with the right knowledge, we can actually inoculate ourselves from committing wrongs so that we don't have to experience the wrong ourselves, because we're actually learning from other individuals' past failures and utilizing their experience for our own, okay? So we're inoculating ourselves by learning from their past failures, from what they learned to be successful and how they learned it. And so ultimately this just means fail early, fail often, fail as much as you possibly can. Enjoy failing. Get in tune with the emotions of feeling bad, okay? This is guilt and shame, okay? Don't be afraid of these feelings. Don't try to hide yourself away from these feelings. When you're experiencing these feelings, just try to find out what occurred that was wrong. And don't try to ask this question, like, what did I do wrong in the present moment? Just save it for later and try to digest it at a later time, okay? And so, remember to let these negative emotions push you to higher heights. Don't allow them to drag you down or pull you down and make you afraid of having emotional experiences. So they exist for a reason, and we're actually very blessed to have them if we're able to utilize them for the better. And in the next couple of videos, what we're going to do is we're going to be moving on from the emotional aspect of consciousness to the thinking aspect of consciousness, the aspect of consciousness that surrounds thought and is the much more interesting aspect for most people to talk about and to think about. And so I'm looking forward to doing that. And also, I understand that this video is much shorter than my normal length videos, so I'm just going to end this video with a little bit of some deciphering of a quote by Alexander Pope. Well, it's often credited to Alexander Pope, and that is the quote, "To err is human, to forgive divine." To err is human just means that you shouldn't be ashamed of committing a wrong, because that's part of the process of being human, committing wrong action, failing, doing things improperly. It's how we actually learn what the right thing to do is. And so this is a very human thing. So to err is human, okay? It's a human thing, and we have to do it, and we need it in order to expand our consciousness. And so the second part is to forgive. This really doesn't mean to forgive others, okay? And by all means, feel free to forgive others when they apologize to you, if they apologize properly. But the point of this quote, to forgive, is focusing on forgiveness of yourself, to allow yourself to forgive yourself for past errors and past mistakes. That's the only way that we're going to actually be able to utilize wrong actions in order to better ourselves and to improve our quality of life, because we need to forgive ourselves when we make a mistake and acknowledge that these mistakes are part of the deal, it's part of the process, okay? So we have to learn from our mistakes, but get over it very quickly and get back on track. Don't let them hold us back from having new experiences and better experiences and trying out new processes in order to try to figure out what is right, okay? And ultimately, the forgiveness part is divine. And so first we have to understand that divine just means superhuman, above human, okay? And it does take superhuman strength to forgive yourself. We're going to talk about what an actual apology is in a couple of videos from now, and what it means to forgive yourself, because it does take superhuman energy, superhuman strength to forgive ourselves, because it's just so easy to feel sorry for ourselves when you fail, okay? And but the thing is that you shouldn't dwell on these feelings. You have a negative feeling, even when you have a positive feeling. These are just brief experiences, brief moments in time, and you feel these things, and then you go, okay, that's what this is trying to tell me. All right, let's take more action. Okay, I did something wrong, that's why I feel bad. Let's figure out what the right thing to do was, and then move forward, all right? And it should be that quick, okay? We don't want to dwell on these things, and the best way to do that is to forgive ourselves. To forgive ourselves when it's like, oh crap, I made a mistake, and we just go, all right, well, that's okay, I forgive myself. Now, what was the right thing to do? In that situation, figure out what the right thing to do was, absolve to do better next time. That's basically what apology is. and then do what the right thing was to do, or do what the right thing is to in the future when you have a future experience, bringing this video full circle. So the only thing that you can do to rectify the situation is to redeem yourself in the future. And that's the most frustrating part about an apology, is that in order for you to complete the apology to yourself, is you have to find yourself in a particular situation that is similar to the situation where you made the wrong action, which allows you to redeem yourself. And that's why I always say, the best thing you can do is have more and more experiences, as many experiences as you possibly can have, because when you do commit a wrong action, you don't want it to be years and years and years again until you get the opportunity to do the right action. That's like the most grueling part about sports, is that you get this one opportunity to win the Super Bowl every year, in football, for example. And if you make a mistake, an error, that thing's gonna dog you. That error, that mistake that cost you the game or whatever, is going to dog you for an entire year until you get an opportunity again in a similar situation to overcome that problem. And that's what experience offers you, so long as you don't let it destroy you in the process. And so forgiving yourself and getting over past wrongs, especially in the times before, so this is important as well that I forgot to bring up, is as you begin to use this stuff as a guide, and you start to think about your past, right? And you start thinking about your actions in a meaningful way, and you start utilizing morality, and you start understanding the idea of right and wrong. What you're going to realize, and which is something that we're going to talk about as we get into thinking, is that you've committed a lot of wrongs in your day, and that can be an overwhelming realization. This is something that causes traumatic events in our lives, things that past experiences that we haven't resolved for ourselves. And there's a whole lot of these. And that's the most frustrating part about this, is that we should be being taught this stuff when we're 10, 11 years old, when we're having our first memorable experiences. But unfortunately, we're doing this when we're 30. We're doing this when we're 20. We're doing this when we're 40 or 50 or 60 even. And we have all these past wrongs that we've unconsciously just taken on and not understood entirely. And then the moment we start experiencing, okay, what is a right action? What is a wrong action? And then we start thinking, it's like, well, in the past, I've done a lot of wrong actions. Like, oh, geez, how do I fix this now? It's like, yeah, that's tough. And we're going to have to talk about it, because forgiving yourself and getting over past wrongs, especially wrongs in times before you knew right from wrong, does take superhuman strength. That's where the superhuman strength really comes in. And it's got to be done. You got to fall in love with yourself again. And that's a tough thing to do when you do actually know the difference between right action and wrong action. When you do acknowledge the fact that you've made a lot of wrongs in your past. But you have to learn to forgive yourself for your failures if you're going to be successful, because failure is how we succeed, okay? And understanding who we are at the human individual level is how we succeed as well, and accepting ourselves and our faults as one and being okay with that. That's part of the process too. It's really about getting to know who you are, truly getting to know who you are. That's what's going to allow you to expand on your success and be able to take on the world, not completely absolving your defense mechanisms and your past traumas, but at least getting into them, at least acknowledging them, that they're there, and being aware, or as quickly as you possibly can, the awareness of when a defense mechanism is kicking in, or when a traumatic event from your past is starting to affect your daily life. And we're going to work on that in the next couple of videos. And so I'm super excited to move on to thought and that aspect of consciousness, because it is one that people find more interesting for some reason than emotion. I don't know why, but I'm one of them as well. And so it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about the hero's journey. We get to talk about the shadow. We get to talk about enlightenment itself. We get to talk about human transformation. And I'm super excited to do that. And so that's it for this video. And I'll see you in the next section.